Good morning and welcome to the show. Thank you for tuning in for another episode of Be the Bank, the best place on the internet to learn about the secondary mortgage market. And I'm your host, Robert Heitha. Before we get into the show, I want to thank all the investors who signed our non-disclosure agreement to receive access to mortgage note opportunities for sale this week. So I thought I already had this fixed for you, but we've got 6 new investors: Mitchell, William, Derek, Infinite Capital, Charisse, and Dennis. Thank you so much, all of you, for signing the non-disclosure agreement, getting on the list to see future opportunities of assets for sale from FIXnotes. So without further ado, let's get into the show. And here we go. All right, folks, thank you so much for joining us for yet another episode. Today's episode is kind of cool. We're talking sort of at a high level on what it takes, I believe, in my opinion, to live a great life, to earn money, to help others, and framing that in the context of one of the staples of our show, and that is bird watching. Because it's something that I think people can find a simple pleasure in, and as you'll see as we get into today's content, that's going to be a very important thing to create a sustainable lifestyle that adds value, builds a business, and allows you to grow as a human and a business person at the same time. So let's get right into it, starting with the overview of the industry, of course, to begin. Then we've got tech. It's a laptop and a phone business, is why probably you're here. You can run it from your home office or really anywhere, on a beach with a laptop and a phone. Also, asset acquisition opportunities, then case studies, exciting time of the show where we talk about sales resolutions that have been completed in the non-performing mortgage note market in the last week or two, and then giveaways. And we talk about how to get on a free consultation with me to talk about business, notes, real estate, whatever can support your business and add value to your goings on in the best way possible. So let's get right into it here, and we'll start with just a little quick advertisement here, because we're going to talk about all the free things that we've got on offer for all of you. So of course that begins with FIXnotes.com/learn. It's our 100% free online course, how to invest in mortgage notes, so you can be the bank, but even better, to make money helping borrowers in this industry. So this is entirely free. There's a lot of people in this space who are going to charge you as a mentor thousands of dollars for this information. On FIXnotes.com, it's all free. A whole bunch of different portals, different subsets organizing the content, getting started, the market, due diligence, closing the deal, and then asset management, along with a bunch of in-depth content into the subsets of the mortgage note market and how to understand the process and get into this business yourself. And then of course we have FIXnotes.com/news. This is an industry news aggregator where we curate a list of articles that have come out in the most recent month, recent days. I normally aggregate this once or twice a week. I look through all of the RSS feed that I have curated and choose just the best articles that make the most sense and are most relevant. As you can see, I've been doing this since May. We've got a whole lot of content there for you. Then we have FIXnotes.com/terms. This is a glossary of everything you need to know. If there's a term that you come across and you don't see it on the list, I'd be happy to add it or answer your question if you need any more information about a specific term. But that's available for free on the FIXnotes website as well. Then we've got premium content. We just launched this in the last 2 weeks. I'm very excited about the Mortgage Notes Mastermind. This is a level up to all of the free content that we offer. So I would definitely recommend going through the YouTube series and all of our mortgage note content on the website. And then when you need a little bit more, when you want some more feedback, some hands-on assistance, the Mortgage Notes Mastermind is the place to go. It's $30 per month. It includes a 50% discount off of my consulting rates, and it offers access to this Podio workspace. We've got all of the recent events organized into this calendar, a forum where at no additional charge you can ask me questions and discuss specific assets and different things you need to cover. We've got all of the case studies from our show, a database of every county in the country and every state, along with the relevant details that you need to understand about those different jurisdictions when getting into the note business. For the states, you're going to find judicial versus non-judicial, foreclosure timeline expenses, foreclosure cost expenses, a whole bunch of different information for you there. Then we've got inventory, where we actually track the mortgage notes that come to our case studies so that you can see not only how we organize our database of mortgage note assets, but also more data on the case studies that we present every week. And then finally, document templates. This is where you'll find RESPA letters and payoff agreements, assignment of mortgage templates, contracts, all that you need to do to structure your business with the appropriate documents. So a whole bunch of great stuff in the FIXnotes Mastermind that I would encourage you guys to check out if you're interested. All right, so let's start with the industry overview. And of course, we need to talk about the events coming up. I'm adding one new event that you guys have not seen in previous weeks. You did see this one, the Note Expo, occurring November 6th and 7th. This is kind of an expensive conference. I think the early bird is $299. The regular admission fee is $699. It is a little bit pricier, and I would say it's a little bit more of a sales pitch. I mentioned this to you guys last week. A lot of this is an upsell into Eddie Speed's other education programs and mentorship. So if you take it for what it is a great opportunity to network and to gain some additional knowledge in the space. So definitely check out the Note Expo. The new event that I'm publishing this week is the QuestCon Live. So Quest is a self-directed IRA company. A self-directed IRA is a way that you can buy mortgage notes tax-free in a retirement account. So QuestCon, Quest Convention, this year it's virtual, is their way of explaining some of the different alternative assets that you can invest in your self-directed IRA, and meet a bunch of different industry participants, both in real estate and in that self-directed sphere. So a whole bunch of great content there. This event I think is only like $69, which I think is a pretty good deal when you look at all of these different speakers that are involved. I think I might even scroll down. Yeah, so a whole bunch of content there, which you can definitely check out if you're interested. And if you've never explored a self-directed IRA, I would definitely recommend that. That's where I buy my cash flowing notes so that I have a retirement account funded by mortgages that people are paying. So it's a cash flowing, tax-free investment that allows me to harness the power of cash flow without paying taxes for my retirement. So we're adding a little bit to this episode with regards to industry news. I wanted to feature one specific article that's been, I thought was interesting this week, and that is this headline: think tank concludes mortgage guidelines could safely be twice as risky. So at face value, I think that this is kind of crazy. To see headlines like this is kind of what we were seeing in 2004 when guidelines started to loosen, which really set the stage for the mortgage crisis of 2007, 2008. So I think though that the conservative approach to lending that took place after that crash in 2007, 2008, maybe tightened the standards a little bit too much. So let's take a look at this chart for a minute. What we'll see here is that the think tank here, the Urban Institute, identified a couple years, 2001 to 2004, where they felt there was reasonable lending standards. So you'll see that highlighted in yellow on this side. And what that's telling us is that this difference between borrower risk and product risk, with this specifically the product risk section being relatively stable with the borrower risk, this is where they saw the guidelines being prudent and effective and not too tight, not too difficult for borrowers to borrow loans, and not too aggressive that it would end up with more defaults. So essentially what this is saying is that the loans that they were allowed to issue were a lot looser guidelines back in 2001 to 2004, and that escalated here from 2004 to 2007. So right there we see the reason for the mortgage crisis in 2007 and 8 was these loosening guidelines. So they really increased their product risk by allowing more borrowers to get loans that maybe shouldn't have qualified. And then when we see after that crash in 2007, 2008, the product risk virtually eliminates. So there's still borrower risk, they're still issuing loans, but they are mitigating a lot of their risk by not allowing the riskier loans that were available back in the heyday over here. But the idea is that you could, this think tank is concluding that you could increase these lending standards closer to these levels. So we could see a lot more loans being issued and the default risk remaining relatively stable. So on one hand, I think this is good news because it does allow more of our non-performing borrowers to be refinanced. But on the other hand, and this maybe is good news as well, depending on your perspective as an investor, but an increase in default risk and a loosening of lending guidelines could essentially create more non-performing mortgage note product on the back end. So that's kind of the bad news, but can be, I don't want to say taken advantage of, but it creates an opportunity for note investors to help borrowers who maybe fell into the default risk buckets and are now receiving loans that maybe are a little bit riskier. So at the end of the day, it's just important to understand the fluctuations in the market, and just in anything, there are cycles at play. And when the pendulum swings one way, it's going to swing all the way back past that middle point. So unfortunately, this may result in loosening of guidelines that could result in more default risk going forward. But an interesting thing to review, you can find that article on mortgagenewsdaily.com, and it's linked at fixnotes.com/news as one of the articles we aggregated for November. All right, so before we get into market pricing, we're going to take a little loop around the cameras, see what we got going on here. We'll start with the first feeder. No, nothing going on there. Our second feeder, as you guys know, last week was taken away by our raccoons friends. They stole the feeder, so there's no bird feeder on this camera, but I have it set up in case we see another raccoon or perhaps a squirrel or something for the nature watching portion of this show. And then of course, we got the koi cam. The koi are really slowing down. It's been like 40-degree overnight in the last couple nights, 40 degrees Fahrenheit, which is very difficult for the fish to digest their food in. So we probably won't be able to be feeding the koi this afternoon, but we'll at least go out and say hi at the end of the show. All right, let's get on with it and talk about the market pricing. So as you'll see, there is a little bit of an update on our market pricing this week, and that can be seen over here in the performing junior lien section of our pricing matrix. So just to give you a high level, because we have discussed this many times in past episodes, but performing loans are priced based on yield. Non-performing loans are priced as a discount, which is calculated typically as a percentage of fair market value for first liens or unpaid principal balance for second liens. The reason we've changed our metrics a little bit on the junior lien side is because after really not doing much business in the reperforming loan market all year, we did put out some reperforming loans to buyers. So I did not go out to the whole list. I do apologize. This was a bulk opportunity to acquire many junior liens reperforming loans at the same time. So this didn't go out to the entire list. But if you are interested in reperforming loans, I'd encourage you to get on the list for future one-off opportunities. Right now, it's kind of a fire sale opportunity somewhat. My primary client, U.S. Mortgage Resolution, is liquidating some assets to make room to recapitalize for year-end opportunities. So we're looking to sell some of that cash flowing portfolio. And what we found is our junior lien reperforming loan pricing was a little bit on the high end. And what's nice about this, and I say the high end, but with pricing based on yield, you kind of have to think in reverse, because a decrease here of 110 basis points from 12.3% yield to 11.2% yield actually increases the price, increases the value of those junior liens. The reason being, when you have a lower yield, you have a higher price. When these numbers increase, higher yields are being offered. That means that the price is actually going down. You're paying less to have a higher return. On the non-performing side, it's the opposite. Since these are priced as a discount on fair market value or unpaid principal balance, these discounts are actually discounts. These 99 basis point and 112 basis point reductions that we noticed from Q3 until the fourth quarter are actually reducing the value of these loans. We saw somewhat of a pricing reduction on the non-performing side. But I expect that to bounce back. We've seen a lot of activity on the non-performing side, and I think the real estate market is relatively stable. Interest rates are going up a little bit in anticipation of the election results to mitigate some of the underwriting risk. I think that there's uncertainty in the election, so that means that lenders have to take the necessary precautions and increase rates. But if they stabilize, or even if they go down or up a little bit, it's not going to change the underlying factor that real estate is relatively stable right now. But we'll see. Anything could happen, and 2020 has definitely shown us that, so we'll see about 2021 and how the real estate market fares. All right, we're gonna look one more time at the cameras because I see a squirrel. I don't think he's made it to the camera yet. No, he's actually right behind here. Let's see if, no. No, he's not there. Let's get on with the show. All right, so next we're going to talk about the due diligence waterfall. This is a really great slide because it allows us to drill down into different aspects of the mortgage note business. So we'll take a real high level look at it first, and then this week I'm going to be zooming in on bankruptcy because we've noticed that our bankruptcy episode has been one of the most popular episodes of the show. So we just want to hash that out, review the bankruptcy chapter 7 versus chapter 13 details with regards to mortgage notes another time just to make sure you guys got it. All right, so right off the bat, secured versus unsecured. That's our very topmost priority when analyzing mortgage notes for sale. We need to confirm that we're still secured by the subject collateral, that we still have the potential to foreclose, to enforce our security instrument. Our security instrument is a mortgage or a deed of trust, and that is the recordable document in public records that evidences the promissory note that the borrower needs to pay back. So as you guys know, we have two documents in the space, a note and a mortgage. The note is the terms and the promise to repay. The mortgage connects that note to the underlying collateral, the mortgage. But once we know that it's secured, which means that the borrower on the mortgage note, mortgage and note documents matches the owner of the property, then we can confirm it's secured and then move on to the rest of our waterfall. First, determining the lien position, whether it's first or second or third, maybe it's fourth. But in most cases, first or second liens are the primary subsets that you'll see. And then once we review value of the property and the subsequent equity protecting the lien, check for bankruptcy, which we'll talk about very shortly, and occupancy, whether or not the home is occupied by the borrower, it's owner occupied, or maybe tenant occupied, or worst case, maybe it's vacant. Then we talk about title reports and taxes in first position liens. I often do not order title reports in junior position liens, but for first liens, I would highly recommend ordering a title report and checking the property taxes. Just like on the junior lien side, where the first lien status really gives you a picture of the borrower's intentions towards the property. If they're paying their first lien, but they're in default on their second, more than likely, they want to stay in the home and they'll work out a deal. Just the same in firsts, if they're paying their property taxes, you can see that they are keeping up with some of the obligations owed on that property. If they're not paying the taxes, then you maybe have a strategic default risk. You may have a borrower who is purposely walking away from the home because the numbers don't make sense to them anymore. Now that is rare. You'll see strategic defaults in the news, especially back in the mortgage crisis in 2008. But it's actually pretty rare. Most borrowers do want to come to an agreement on a loan, and in the case where they are completely underwater and they no longer want to retain the collateral, a deed in lieu of foreclosure is much more common than a strategic default where the borrower just forces the foreclosure. Most borrowers will be agreeable to signing a deficiency or to signing a deed in lieu of foreclosure to avoid the deficiency balance, which is in a short sale position, the amount of money that's owed above the value of the property. If you have a liquidation event where the property is sold, then if it didn't pay off the entire loan, the remaining balance owed, that deficiency balance, can also be pursued by a lender. So for a borrower to cooperate with a lender is in their best interest to avoid that deficiency judgment. And then on the junior lien side, the two biggest drivers of price after we know secured versus unsecured are the senior lien status and the equity position. And we'll definitely get back into senior lien statuses and junior versus senior loans in a future episode. We've of course reviewed it in a past episode as well, but today we're talking about bankruptcy. We're going to talk about specifically Chapter 7 versus Chapter 13 and how you can evaluate that risk. So let's start with Chapter 7. So with Chapter 7 bankruptcies, which are also called a liquidation of debt, there's a $23,675 limit on the equity in the homestead. So that basically gives you some protection as a junior lien holder. And we'll see in Chapter 13, you can actually be stripped and your lien can be wiped out and uncollectible through a lien strip in the Chapter 13. In Chapter 7, the borrower's income must be low enough to pass a means test, otherwise their bankruptcy will be dismissed. There's 3 results. A bankruptcy can be dismissed, which means thrown out, it can be discharged, or it can be active, and it can be pending. Another factor here, typically 3 to 5 months to discharge on Chapter 7s. Chapter 7 bankruptcies are a lot quicker because it's a liquidation of debt. It's not a reorganization, which we'll see in Chapter 13. In Chapter 7, the trustee sells all non-exempt property to pay creditors. So when a borrower is filing for Chapter 7 bankruptcy, they need to be prepared to liquidate their assets, and that will happen through the trustee. Now, on the Chapter 13 side, which is called a reorganization of debt, the borrower cannot have more than $394,000 of unsecured or $1.18 million of secured debt. So once a borrower reaches that high net worth, well, it's hard to determine net worth when you've got this substantial amount of debt, but if you have above these numbers, then you're not going to qualify for Chapter 13. Your borrower will have their bankruptcy be dismissed. Chapter 13s are discharged when planned payments are complete. So as opposed to 3 to 5 months, Chapter 13 is going to take 3 to 5 years. But the good news with a Chapter 13 bankruptcy, when you have equity as a junior lien holder, or a senior lien holder, which would have equity mostly by definition, you're going to be receiving payments directly from the court. So if that borrower gets into a bankruptcy situation, maybe to stop a foreclosure action, because bankruptcy puts foreclosures on hold, that borrower will then have to begin paying their loan obligations through the bankruptcy court. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. It does slow things down as a lender, but it helps the borrower reposition themselves, reorganize their debt in Chapter 13, or liquidate their debt, liquidate their assets to pay off their debt in Chapter 7. And then finally, it removes or reduces cram down the junior liens through a lien strip. So the lien strip removes the junior lien if it's wholly unsecured, and a cram down reduces the balance owed on a junior lien based on the equity in the property. The way you can determine this is by looking at the voluntary petition, which is one of the first documents filed into bankruptcy, and scroll down to the Schedule D. The Schedule D is the secured creditors, and this has all of the assets and the liens and debts that are owed against those assets, so that as a junior position lien holder, you can see the value of the home per the borrower and the amount that's owed on the first lien and how much money is left over, how much equity is available to you as a junior lien holder. So if that number, first you're going to look at the property value. If that number looks artificially low, then you would need to have your attorney file a dispute for a higher property value to make sure that you are not crammed down or lien stripped. Now, if it's accurate, then that's going to be an important thing to review, because if an accurate property value shows that you have no equity as a junior lien holder in a Chapter 13, then your lien is at risk of being stripped. Now, the thing with a lien strip in a Chapter 13 bankruptcy is that it is not effective until the bankruptcy is discharged. When that bankruptcy is still active, there's the potential of being dismissed, and a dismissal will revert any lien strips or cram downs that have been decided through the court. The borrower will have to file the bankruptcy again in order to successfully complete the plan to have those second liens crammed down. So important distinction to understand with active Chapter 13s, even though they can appear to be negative equity, most of the time, well, not most of the time, but often, Chapter 13 bankruptcies are dismissed, and that lien strip is no longer actually going to go through. All right, so let's get into today's show, bird watching for business people. I'm kind of going to riff on this idea. I didn't prepare a whole bunch, but I wanted to share with you my philosophy, my mindset into living a life that I believe is worth living, helping others, creating value, and really building a lifestyle that is sustainable to you. Because in this business or in life in general, if you, and I think there's an idiom that goes something like, never get famous doing something you hate. If you put yourself in a position where your job isn't something that you enjoy, and you're just going to work every day to make money, to go back to work the next day, it's not going to be a fulfilling lifestyle, and you're not going to be able to reach your full potential as a bringer of value to the world. So what I did prepare, I listened to a couple lectures by the great Alan Watts, and he has some really cool thought experiments that I think will be useful to you guys to think about as you understand where you're heading in your business and your life. So before we get on to it, let's actually do a little bird watching here. No birds, no squirrels, no fish. We got no friends today, but we're going to keep talking about it here. Bird watching for business people. So the first question that I think you can ask yourself is a question right from Alan Watts, and he's got some amazing lectures that people have posted on YouTube. I would highly recommend checking them out to really get more context for this idea. But the first thing he asks is, what would you do if money were no object? What would you pursue? What direction would your life take if it didn't have to be about making money? And that's a very difficult thing, I think, for Westerners who've been kind of absorbed by this consumerist society, this culture that we've developed, to think about, because money really does make our entire society revolve. It's really about money at the end of the day for a lot of people. So if you can separate that from the equation, which I also understand is very difficult when you're struggling financially. So that's something that I believe you can think about as a thought experiment in the beginning, but actually start to live out as you create passive wealth and passive income in order to kind of detach yourself from that rat race mentality. But Alan Watts takes it a step further. He asked, what would you do if money was no object? But the next question is, what would you do if you were God? And I think that this question is even more enlightening, because when you think about money not being an object and being a human, you kind of can drift towards selfishness, and you can drift towards pleasures and creating a lifestyle for yourself and your loved ones that is enjoyable, relaxing, that watching birds, that kind of thing. But if you take that a step further and think about what you would do if you were a God, thinking in those human terms, that kind of selfish approach to making your own life more comfortable seems asinine, because if you were God, you could actually do so much more to make a difference. So I think what this question leads you to believe is that at the end of the day, it's about helping people. It's about adding value and improving not only your immediate family, but your community, your country, your world, so that you can make a positive difference. So just a couple thoughts, and definitely listen to some of his lectures to get a little bit of a better idea. But because we're not God, we're just people, we use tools that we discussed on the show before, like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And this is a good way, I think, to structure that thought process with the first question, what would you do if money were no object? Because as long as you fulfill these steps along the way, your physiological needs, having food and water and shelter, actually the next one is safety needs, which is your shelter and your security. And then we have belongingness and love, having relationships, having good interpersonal development with the people around you. Then esteem needs, having some prestige or feelings of accomplishment. And then, of course, self-actualization, which is the pinnacle of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And there has been some reimaginings of this and some developments that are more modern. This was, I think, come up with in 1943. So it is, on one hand, kind of timeless, but on the other, needs to be thought about in the new context of the world we live in. But it's interesting to think about this and how you can achieve these lower rungs of the pyramid to reach that point of self-actualization. But one of the major factors in this process is having an aim. As humans, we are mobile creatures. We want to move, not necessarily actually traveling. Some of you might love to travel. Of course, I do as well. But it's about moving in a positive direction to achieve some goal. And without making small steps along the way and being able to see your progress when you look back or see that goal in the future when you look forward, that's going to be what motivates us as humans to achieve an aim. And what's kind of surprising about this, and it's difficult to see until you've experienced it, but when you actually reach your goal, when you reach your aim, that's not quite as satisfying as the steps along the way. And it sounds like a cliche, but the journey is really the part that you need to embrace. The grind, the effort that you make to get to your aim, to get to your goal, is what you need to really enjoy. Something else that I learned from Alan Watts, and I didn't put it into the slides here, but it was about the present and how we often think about the past being what creates the present. And that as a being living in the present, that we are just subject to what has come before us. But it's not true. That's an amazing fallacy, because the present is when creation happens. What happens in the present is not happening because of the past. It is what creates the past. It's kind of like a boat traveling through the ocean. The boat is the present. The wake behind the boat is the past. So as you are in the driver's seat of the boat, you can control where you go towards the future and where you've been in the past. So try to get out of the mindset of being a victim of the past, and do everything you can in the present to make the most of what happens in the future. You can think of it like an hourglass. Actually, I didn't even plan this, but I have an hourglass here. So if this is the past, and this is the future where the sand is falling, right here, this tiny little point could be seen as the present. So that's why it's so difficult to get into that mindset, because that tiny little point that is the present feels like it's just the center point between the past and the future. But in reality, that is what's driving everything. The present is all we have, and it should be taken to the best degree. You should be achieving everything you can in the present to try to add value and to improve your future. So I'm getting a little woo-woo here, but bear with me a little longer. And we're going to talk about ikigai. And that is a really interesting Japanese concept that we've also covered in a past episode. And ikigai, I think, is one way to reach that pinnacle of Maslow's hierarchy, to reach that self-actualization. It's really more of a kind of structure to define what will bring you that self-actualization, and I think it's very useful. So if we look around the different quadrants here, what you love, what the world needs, what you can be paid for, and what you are good at, the goal is to find something, find an activity, find a business, or you could call it a vocation, actually, and we'll see that in a minute, that combines all of these components together. Because that's what's going to bring you the most fulfillment in life. By doing something that you love, that the world needs, that you can be paid for, and that you are good at. And some of this can be developed, of course, if you start with something that you love and the world needs and you can be paid for, but you're not good at it yet. That's something that you can develop into. But it's interesting to see these subsets along the Venn diagram. So if you're good at it and you love it, but you can't get paid, that's a passion. And that's definitely something that you can pursue if you have a day job. But that's not ideal. If you can create a confluence of all of these points together, that's where you're going to find the most meaning. If you love it and the world needs it, it's a mission. It's something important that needs to be achieved, but it's not quite there yet. It's not ikigai. If you can be paid for it and the world needs it, that's good. It's a vocation. But if you don't love it, that's very difficult. If you're paid for it and you're good at it, that's a profession. You're a professional. But if you don't love it, if the world doesn't actually need it, then what good is it? And then, of course, if you combine all of these, a passion, a mission, a profession, and a vocation together, then you reach that point of ikigai. And it's sort of a moving target. I think that it's impossible to, maybe not impossible, but it's very difficult to just know, and this is my purpose, and this is where I'm headed. But it's definitely something that you can slowly hone in on as you develop your career. But I believe that in the beginning of the process, when you are working on your note business or structuring, and this is something I tell clients all the time, to create their competitive advantage. You can't be in this business to delegate everything. You need to have something, some secret sauce that you can offer the industry to add value and really create a competitive advantage for your specific business. So as you're honing in on your competitive advantage, you're deciding what you want to delegate, what you want to outsource, what you want to automate. The ikigai concept can help you create that competitive advantage in line with something that you love and you're good at. And in the note business, there's plenty of money, so you can definitely be paid for it. And something that the world needs. And that's, I think, maybe the main point in the note business, because it is something that the world needs. Entrepreneurs that are able to resolve non-performing mortgage notes in a way that the bank wasn't able to. That is very important, but it can be kind of missed by the fact that there is a lot of opportunity to be paid and to make money in this business. So make sure that at the end of the day, you are thinking in terms of helping the borrower. Here's another thing that I came across this week. And this is pretty common, but a lot of non-performing note investors like to buy loans based on the unpaid principal balance and then sell loans based on the payoff balance. So it's kind of an accounting trick. They take the loan in, they get their servicer to prepare a payoff quote, they accumulate all the arrears and the other charges that are due on the loan, and then they put that loan back out for sale with that payoff quote, And in the spreadsheet, they have a payoff balance. The spreadsheet's your data tape, what you're analyzing as a note buyer. So note buyers who are looking at this data tape are then pricing based on the payoff balance. Well, really, that's just kind of an accounting trick. They didn't add any value by preparing a payoff quote and then putting it in a spreadsheet. All they're doing is passing the buck. They're putting that loan off to another investor who's now going to have more of an uphill battle. They have a higher cost basis. They have the less ability to offer discounts to the borrower. And at the end of the day, they're not actually serving the borrower by doing that. So I think that that's not the best practice. I can see when you are adding the payoff balance together and then pursuing a foreclosure and actually spending some money on the legal proceeding, getting those balances documented by your attorneys. That's a little bit more of the value adding equation. But I think that just by buying based on unpaid principal balance and selling based on the payoff balance, you're not doing anybody any good, and I would advise against it because it's not what the world needs at the end of the day. All right, a couple more quotes from Alan Watts to close out this segment. Here's a cool one. Do things that are delightful to you. You become thereby delightful to others. If you're doing things that you hate and you're going through the motions, maybe in a job that you don't enjoy, you're not going to be delightful to others. You can be, certainly, if you're doing a job that needs to be done and you can find some joy in it somehow. You can use other aspects of your life to find delight and then consequently be delightful to others. But if you can find that ikigai, if you can find a place, but let's look at this. Oh no, our camera died. A squirrel literally just jumped in front of the camera and we missed it. But in any case, if you can find that center point between your passions and your vocation, and I don't remember the rest of them, but if you can find that ikigai, that's going to allow you much more opportunity to be pleasant, to be delightful, to be able to support others and be a positive influence to the world. Here's another good quote. People who are interesting are people who are interested. Thinking about things that you're fascinated by, you will become fascinating. So if you don't have a lot going on in your head, if you're not thinking about interesting things in the world and trying to improve yourself and get better every day, then how can you expect to be interesting? How can you expect to be a fascinating person if you're not studying or at least interested in fascinating things? And I'm in the way here. Let me get out of the way here. It's so cool that in this world we do have the opportunity to do so many different things, to pursue so many different interests through the internet. You can research and learn about and find communities based on the smallest little niche. And if that niche can also create a career, that's an amazing opportunity. But even if not, you're creating an amazing set of skills, of knowledge that can translate into bringing more joy to others. And that's really the name of the game. To spread joy, you have to have it. So try to find something that brings you joy. Try to find something that is delightful to you and you're interested and fascinated by, even if it's not that full ikigai, but it is something that you love and you're good at. You can still work that into a career. It's amazing these days, the careers that the internet has allowed to be available. People play video games, people go, make surfing vlogs and they live their whole life surfing. Like there's so many things you can do with the internet that you could never do before. So just to get started, try to think in terms of the things that you're good at, the things that you love, the things that the world needs, and then you can find a way to get paid for those things as well. All right, so that's some quotes by Alan Watts. If you've never heard of Alan Watts, definitely look him up. He was born in 1911 and spread some really, really great information on how to live your best life, how to get out of the rat race, how to be somebody who is interesting and fascinating and who can add value to the world. And I say this all the time on the show. Think about adding value. Hone in on the ways that you can add value, and the rest of the things will fall into line if you're helping others. So really, at the end of the day, what is this about? It's about making the most of your life, and passive income, real estate mortgage notes are definitely a key to that, because to get out of the rat race, unfortunately, we do need to be somewhat independently wealthy, or not wealthy, but independently cash flowing. You need multiple streams of income in many, many areas in order to pursue the things that you love. So maybe mortgage notes and a business is a means to an end for you. Maybe it's a career. But at the end of the day, it can be more than that if you think in the right terms. So that's it for bird watching for business people, a metaphor on how to live your best life and to do the things you love while also being able to do the best for the world. All right, let's talk about tech tips and the hardware and the software that we use in this business to make the automation and the efficiency work for us. So you need a capable PC or Mac, of course. You need a good phone. Or not. I mean, if you just have a good computer, you could probably work without a phone, but who doesn't have a smartphone these days? And then, of course, fast Wi-Fi and a cellular network. Even if it's slow, what's nice about a lot of these web services is that the calculations, the processing is happening on the cloud, on the servers of the software that you're using. So even if your computer isn't great, if you can log into Podio and have enough bandwidth just to click a button, you can actually have PDFs generated, documents emailed. You can have your whole business automated and running off the Podio servers through Citrix rather than through your own computer. But that's kind of getting into the weeds. We use a lot of great tools here. We use Podio and Globoflow, which is also called Citrix Podio Workflow Automation. This allows us to automate workflows and to connect Podio with various other web services. Pacer is public access to court electronic records. This is where we review bankruptcy information, which we talked about earlier this episode. Right signature is how we have our loan purchase sale agreements executed. Gmail, I'm in maybe far too often than I should be. I should be automating more of my Gmail activity, but at the time being, this is really where I'm stuck. Zapier is a great non-coding way to develop automation using like Google Sheets and other web services. So Citrix and Citrix Podio, this Globoflow and Podio are a little bit higher level. Knowing some JavaScript is useful. Not that I do, it's above my pay grade, but it's definitely has more power than Zapier, whereas Zapier can be connected without knowing any coding. So I use Zapier for webhooks, and it's something that I'm able to figure out just by Googling and copying and pasting things. So I would highly recommend just looking into Zapier as maybe a foot, just a toe in the water into automation. Then we've got CoreLogic, DataTree, both services that offer real estate records. Then we've got Zillow, Google Sheets, Excel, ProTitle USA for title reports, TransUnion for credit reports, and then TLO XP for skip tracing. Today's episode, we're gonna just touch quickly on CoreLogic. We went through an entire episode about CoreLogic Credco in the past and how we use Credco to analyze bulk portfolios of mortgage notes. But today we're talking about a new service. This article just came out, I think yesterday, from Credco about how they're collaborating with Google to offer game-changing services. So we'll see if their claim here lives up to expectations. But basically what they are claiming here is that they're going to be able to increase their appraisals, which are really AVMs, automated valuation models, but they'll be able to offer those 300% faster, and they'll also be able to identify before, during, and after hazardous weather and wildfire events within minutes whether or not a property has been affected. So CoreLogic is great on the due diligence side because you can use it to order vast quantities of data and then use that data to analyze mortgage notes that you're looking to purchase. But CoreLogic is also very useful as a monitoring tool to audit your portfolio on a monthly or quarterly basis to determine whether or not you are seeing risks of things like these hazardous weather or wildfire events or changes in property value or unpaid property taxes. CoreLogic can do a lot as a auditing tool on a monthly basis in addition to being a due diligence service. So it's going to be something we keep an eye on, but Google has made a little bit of a splash on the mortgage space by collaborating with Roostify, which is another article that came out in maybe the last month. But now CoreLogic is also partnering with Google. So we'll see what happens. Google obviously has some very, very large data sets, some very, very large cloud computing and servers that are already deployed. So we'll see if CoreLogic can leverage that in the way that they claim for a lot faster processing and more data. But we'll maybe come back to that later as we actually have a chance to use these new services. All right, so in order to buy loans on FIXnotes.com, assets for sale, you got to go over to Buy Notes, FIXnotes.com/buynotes. Click the Sign NDA for Access button. Fill out our form here. This form will generate an email to you with the right signature document to sign. Once you sign that, you'll get the signed document back in your inbox and a notification that your membership has changed. Your membership will change when you click My Account, from course to course plus inventory access. You'll be given access to the course as soon as you sign up, but course plus inventory access gives you everything and then some. You also get access to this page, FIXnotes.com/buynda, where you can see all of the unmasked data, and here's the updated one, all of the unmasked data on the current inventory for sale. So in order to review assets for sale, you need all of the data. In order to provide you all of the data, we need a non-disclosure agreement signed, because we're providing confidential, personally identifiable borrower information that needs to be acknowledged as safe and confidential before you review it. All right, so let's talk about case studies. And we're doing a little bit better on time this week. We're 48 minutes in. We've been going like an hour and a half long these last couple of weeks. So we're trying to keep it to an hour. We'll try. Definitely leave a comment below if you prefer the longer format, if you'd like it to be shorter than an hour. And we'll see how we can adjust the show to be most beneficial for you, because that's what this is about. All right, so case study, non-performing second lien secured by a single-family residential property. We closed this deal with a modification agreement. Well, when I say close this deal, we've got the cash flow started, but the loan is still sitting on the books. And what you'll find that's very interesting about this account, and I'm excited to share it with you because it's unlike any of the other case studies we've done, is the reperforming loan value at $20,000 is less than what we paid for it. But let's go on and I'll explain why. So fair market value is $452,850. The senior lien balance was $206,694. That leaves $246,156 of equity, protecting our $88,986 unpaid principal balance. Let's take a quick look because we got a bird. There, we did it. We bird watched today, guys. So we always ask 3 questions when we start an initial conversation with a non-performing mortgage borrower. What happened? Where are you now? And what do you want to do? And the bird's back. So let's just think about those 3 questions while we watch this little, what is it? I can't even see it. All right, he's gone. So what happened? In this case, there's a combination of medical debt, failed investment, and job loss. So the medical issue, it was kind of traumatic even to hear about it, but in August, the borrower got their hand caught in a table saw. So it was, a very bad situation, a lot of medical expense, a lot of trauma there. And then they also had a rental property that the market the rental property was in kind of went downhill. They started with renting to professionals, and the renters became less and less savory as the community. I don't exactly know what happened there, but at the end of the day, they weren't receiving rent anymore. The tenants that they were able to have in the property were destroying the home from the inside out, and they weren't making any money on their deal. And then there was also a job loss here. So kind of a triple whammy, which all resulted in a default on their $88,000 loan. So they are living in the subject property, so that's good news. It is owner occupied. The bad news is they already used their 401k for a hardship withdrawal. So in most cases, if you have a mortgage note in default, but you have a 401k retirement account, your lender, and I'm speaking from the borrower's perspective, your lender can prepare really like a demand letter or the initiation of the foreclosure to be provided to your 401k provider to then request an early withdrawal, penalty-free, to save your home from foreclosure. So in this case, though, they had already used that to reinstate their first position loan. They failed to modify this subject loan, the second position mortgage with the previous lender. And the reason was, and you're going to see that very soon, they can only afford $200 a month. So at this point, the co-borrower is working retail. The borrower, who's an engineer, had much difficulty finding an engineering job. He had a couple engineering jobs and the companies went out of business. So now he's working as a substitute teacher, obviously with a reduced income there. They're just trying to come up for air. Those were the exact words. But they wanted to get their finances in order. That's what would really allow them to make the next steps and really make better decisions by relieving that financial stress. So they could only afford $200 a month, and that's very tricky on a loan that's $88,000 balance. So I'm bringing this case study to you guys because it offers an example of how you can make a deal like this work without pursuing the foreclosure. And when we got a call from a borrower very early in the process like this, the goal is always to get that borrower paying again or to pay off the loan, to do something that fits their financial situation to help them move forward. If this loan had been on our books for a year or 2 years and we've been trying to call the borrower and we're not getting anywhere, then it's going to have to go through the foreclosure process. There's so much equity here to protect our lien. We probably would end up getting some resolution in place once the foreclosure has been started. But this borrower was incredibly proactive in reaching out as soon as the RESPA letter was sent. RESPA is the Real Estate Settlements and Procedures Act. That was last week's episode, all about the servicing transfer process. So definitely check that out. So what do they want to do? Well, we figured it out, an interest-only step rate modification. So what this means is that $88,986 balance is not going anywhere. That's the balloon payment. That amount is going to be owed at any point that they pay off the loan. But to keep the loan current, they're paying interest only. So every single month, they're not paying any principal. They're only paying interest payments. And it's a step rate modification because every year of payments, the interest rate increases, which consequently increases the payment amount. So what that's doing is giving the borrower more and more incentive every year the rate increases to pay off the loan with a refinance. Because they have plenty of equity, a refinance is definitely possible once they get back on their feet. And by giving them this lower $220 monthly payment, they're going to be able to get in good standing on this loan, work out some of their other financials, and come to a point where they are able to refinance. So, and when I say step rate, this isn't a huge increase. I think it's a 50 basis point increase. So it's like from 4% to 4.5%. So the monthly payment amount goes from $220 to $240 to $260, somewhere around there. And it caps, we did a 4-year interest-only step rate. It caps at like $350, I believe, per month. So every year they're paying a little bit more, but they can refinance at any time with no prepayment penalty. So that's the goal here. The goal is to help the borrower refinance. So let's look at the timeline. We paid 45 cents on the dollar for this, and that's a little high. We paid less than that, but this is what the loan would be worth as a non-performing loan. So that's the number that we're going to use to structure the rest of this conversation. Hopefully if you acquire a loan in this situation, you'll be able to buy it for less. Maybe you buy it in bulk as this loan was purchased, which would give you a better discount at the end of the day. All right, so at 45 cents on the dollar and only 1 month and less than $200 of expenses, we've created this reperforming loan. The modification agreement was just returned, it's signed, they're going to start their payments right away. So this loan, and this is where it gets interesting, is worth less as a reperforming loan. And the reason is because reperforming loans are priced based on yield, and by coming up with a $200 a month payment, in this case $220 per month, the yield that the investor would generate when they acquire this loan at $20,000 would be a fair market amount of about 12 or 14%. And actually that's a little high. So let me do the math here. At $220, we'll net out $15 per month of servicing fees. So that's $205 times 12. So annualized, we get $2,460 per year, $2,460 per year. We'll go at the very lowest interest rate or the lowest yield expectation on junior liens, which is 11.3. So we're going to divide the annual income by 0.113. So that's $21,769. So essentially, if you bought this loan for $22,000 and you received $220 per month, your cash-on-cash return is only 11%. But the good news is that interest-only payment means that the principal balance that's there. So they owe $88,000. So what the point of this is to say is that a loan like this would not be a loan that would be resold as a reperformer. We talk often about the fix and flip model, where you take a non-performing loan, you get a cash flowing and modified, and then you sell it to a cash flowing investor. This one is a little more of the long game. This one is expected to pay off in the next 4 years at the very latest, and the payoff would be for $88,000. So these kind of nominal $200 to $300 monthly payments as the step rate increases are just to keep the loan in good standing, just to make sure that that borrower is keeping up with their commitments. The goal, as we discussed, is to refinance. So what are the takeaways here? Encourage refinances. We have historically low interest rates today. And as we just saw in the beginning of the show, the lending guidelines are loosening a little bit. So more borrowers are going to be able to refinance. And this helps the borrower. Taking advantage of these historically low interest rates shouldn't just be for those of you like us who are, savvy real estate investors. It also should be for people who are struggling, but they are responsible and they're working and they can make their monthly payments. So that's the goal here, to help the borrower, to get them to refinance. Now, structuring modifications that are fair and affordable helps align your interests. So the alternative here, and this is the next point, weighing your options between a legal battle and an amicable resolution, the alternative here is to foreclose. And if you look at the numbers here, yes, a foreclosure would have been definitely a higher payoff, a higher internal rate of return, a better, just strictly monetarily, a better outcome. Now there is a caveat, this isn't a judicial state, this is in New Jersey, which has a slower foreclosure process. So by the time we actually got to the point of a sheriff's sale, and I highly doubt it would even get that far because of the amount of equity in the property, but then again, the borrower was kind of at their wit's end here. They didn't have much more, anything to pull from. No 401k, no savings, limited income. So it could have went all the way to foreclosure. These borrowers could have lost their home, but that's not what we're looking to do. In this case, we're looking to put an interest-only payment plan together that allows the borrower to keep the loan current until they're ready to pay it off. So try not to put yourself in a situation where you can't afford to be patient, because by being patient here, we're going to have, and I said it would be a higher internal rate of return to go through the foreclosure. I didn't run the numbers, and now that I think about it, probably wouldn't be, because we're receiving immediate cash flow every single year. Our internal rate of return, our cash on cash return go up every single year as the interest rate increases, and we're eventually going to get that $88,000 payoff. If we went through the foreclosure process, we'd have spent $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 on legal bills. We didn't receive any money in the meantime, and eventually we would get that payoff plus some arrears, but it would not come with month after month of $220 and then $240 and then up to $300 per month payments along the way. So at the end of the day, this is the best option for the borrower, and it works very well for the investor who has enough patience to hold the deal until that payoff comes through. No prepayment penalty here. So if the borrower was able to refinance tomorrow, we would be very happy to receive that. They'd save money on all those interest payments, and our internal rate of return, getting that deal done so quickly, would be off the charts. All right, we got a little friend. Oh, this is a woodpecker. We don't often see the downy woodpecker. So let's say hi. Hello, woodpecker. Bird watching for business people, guys. Thanks for tuning in. All right, so now we're going to talk about a sale, a non-performing first lien secured by vacant land. This one was closed with a loan sale for $78,000. And I don't normally do this, so I hope I don't jinx it, but this deal's closing today. So we should expect funding before the end of the day today. So we're going to talk in terms of a deal that's happening right now. So the fair market value on this loan is over $120,000, and we'll see why it's kind of questionable. Zero in taxes. We paid off the property taxes already. Equity is $120,000 or more. You'll see why it's kind of weird. And the balance is huge, $451,747. They owe a lot of money on this account. And we got another friend. That's the nuthatch. So let's start with bulk or retail sale, due diligence findings, and then the final purchase decision. So start with bulk retail sale. So this was a one-off purchase. The last couple deals we've talked about have been bulk, multiple loans all packaged together. This one though was a one-off. It was an individual asset purchase based on the merits of this single loan. Retail pricing was discounted heavily though. We actually had a much higher offer that did not pan out. So this was a backup bid for a little bit less that did work out. So in due diligence, they did find, and this was something that the seller knew going into it, that it was being sold as land, but there was actually a property on the lot. There was a partially completed rehab, or not rehab, a partially completed structure, new construction already built on the lot. The exterior was okay. I call it a rehab here, but I meant construction. It was partially finished. It looked like they got almost all the way to installing cabinets, but they hadn't done the plumbing yet, which seems a little out of order. But that was the information from the township. The subject lien is in foreclosure. So the seller, U.S. Mortgage Resolution, my client, is actually foreclosing on the loan already because we were not able to reach the borrower. We can see that there's value here. There's a structure on the property and there's a huge balance. So by pursuing the foreclosure, there's potential for a deficiency judgment after we get the foreclosure sale completed. But we're selling this and transferring the legal file over to the new buyer as part of the deal. So we're going to close out our legal bill, and then the buyer is then going to open up a new account with the attorney. So the final purchase decision here started at $85,000. They had to reduce their offer to offset township fines. I think they reduced it to like 73 or 74. Came up with a counter of 78. It was accepted, and that's how we move forward. So a couple other considerations here. $100,000 plus sale, almost closed. We almost had this deal sold to another investor for a little bit more, but the other buyer got cold feet after seeing the township fines and kind of being uncomfortable with the interior of the property, and so they backed off. They didn't want to close the deal. This also had some additional advantage, and I mentioned this earlier, seller fire sale. At this time of the year, we're looking to recapitalize. We're looking to make some room for some other acquisition opportunities. So that gives an opportunity to buyers to close out deals like this that are definitely viable opportunities. And if we hold this deal, we could make some more money on it. But the timeline is going to extend us into 2021. We want to get the deal funded right now. And there's our white-breasted nuthatch friend. So there's also this huge unpaid principal balance, which does have the possibility of collection on the deficiency balance. So the large UPB is going to be paid off. It's going to be offset by the foreclosure sale. But if the property only sells, let's say we get a little lucky, it sells for $151,000. That still leaves $300,000 of deficiency. That's the difference between the amount that's owed and the amount that the foreclosure sale generated in proceeds. So that's possible to collect on the deficiency judgment, but it's unlikely. In this case, the borrower would probably end up filing for bankruptcy and wiping out that unsecured debt. And I didn't mention this in our bankruptcy slide, but bankruptcy removes the personal liability from a mortgage note. So if a bankruptcy is discharged, if it's dismissed, still on the table. But a discharged bankruptcy can no longer be pursued personally. That does mean you can foreclose on it if it's a secured lien, but with an unsecured deficiency judgment like this, a deficiency balance, that would be uncollectible because you cannot pursue it personally anymore if the borrower files for bankruptcy. So that's probably what's going to happen here if it was pursued. And then finally, as I mentioned, we're closing out our legal bill, passing that on to the new buyer, transferring the documents, and they're going to be able to open up a new account to pay for the remaining legal fees to close the foreclosure. So that's a pretty good deal, $78,000 sale. It's a pretty nominal percent of that giant unpaid principal balance, but it's a fair percentage of the fair market value, which is typically how first liens are priced. All right, that's it for the case studies. Now we're going to just talk briefly about giveaways here. We started the show offering giveaways to those of you who liked the video, commented, and subscribed. But I thought I would open it up to everybody. So we're offering 15-minute consultations. Of course, we appreciate the subscribers, the likes, and the comments. So thank you for doing that and helping us out. But all you have to do is go to robbiemax.youcanbook.me and select a time slot, and we'll get on a consultation call. Now, my wife has made it very clear that after 15 minutes, we got to start the clock, got to pay the bills. But I'd be happy to take that 15-minute call with no additional obligation to pay me for more consulting time. Be happy to help you out on entrepreneurship, business, real estate, mortgage notes specifically, even a specific deal or question you have that's very, very granular. Happy to get into the details as long as we can fit it into 15 minutes. And yes, I talk this fast on our consultation calls as well, so you'll get a good value for your free 15-minute call there. All right, thank you so much for watching, guys. As you know, I do really enjoy doing this show. I enjoy looking at the bird friends. He just left. Love hanging out with the fish, and that's what we're going to do now. So we're going to step out back. I'm not feeding them because the water temperature is just a little too low, But I'll see if they want to come say hi, and we'll hang out with them for a minute. So just to recap, thank you so much for watching. You can find all of this free stuff, and let me just do this. All of that free stuff we offered in the beginning, and it's not even everything that's mentioned here. We've got the glossary at fixnotes.com/terms. We've got the note investing course, fixnotes.com/learn. The news aggregator, fixnotes.com/news. And then the next level, the Mortgage Notes Mastermind, which you can find at fixnotes.com/VIP or just MNM for Mortgage Notes Mastermind. So I would highly encourage you to just check out that page, and you can see a little bit more about what we're offering, 50% discount on my consulting rates, and all of that Podio workspace goodness, databases and content and templates and a forum, a whole bunch of great information to take you to the next level. All right, so we're gonna head out to the koi pond. Let me just set things up so that I have enough time to get out there, take off my mic, and we'll say hi to the fish before we close out the show for the day. Thank you again. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. And until next time, what do I do now? We gotta get our macro set up. Okay. All right, fish friends. You want to say hi, guys? Oh, come on, everybody. So we haven't been feeding them the last couple days because of how cold it's been. So we'll see if they still remember me. Come on, guys. Say hello. It's almost time to shut down the pond. We've got to clear out the filter, clear out the pipes, and then put some like netting over the top of this, because in the winter we don't have all of this greenery, and the fish don't have as many places to hide. So last year, before all the lily pads grew, we had a heron come down here a couple times. We saw herons staking out the pond to eat the fish. And unfortunately, one of them got their foot caught in the previous owner's contraption to try to keep this pond safe. They had put monofilament, like fishing line, all over the top of this. So they had these thin, almost invisible, and not like a net, but like a crisscross spider web. And the heron came and got his foot caught in it. And when he tried to fly away, when we went out there, he really hurt his leg. So we had to call the Audubon Society and the SPCA, and we had to get people out here to rescue the heron. So we actually got the bird. The bird was kind of, oh, here's a friend. The bird kind of hobbled away over into the forest at the end of the property, and we had to catch him and wrap him in a blanket and put him in a box, and then the animal control people came and grabbed him and took him to be rehabilitated. All right, I'm gonna bring you guys closer because these guys are having fun nibbling. Come on, friends. I'm trying to do this one-handed. All right, come back here, friends. The water's so cold. This is our favorite guy. He's the most friendly. He'll probably be the first to come. These little black ones, if you can see these are goldfish. They are black when they're still like too scared, and then they'll turn yellow once they get comfortable. See this guy right here. This guy's the favorite friend. He's very, very friendly. This guy's pretty friendly too, and he's got like a gold head. Come here. This water is so cold. I feel bad for the little guys. Oh. They're really hungry, but you can't feed them when it's this cold. Alright friends, thank you so much for watching. Always a pleasure to teach you what I know about the mortgage market, secondary distressed debt industry. And until next time, you can find me on Facebook, you can find me here on YouTube, leave a comment with any questions. We've got an Instagram, you can email me, get on the robbymax.youcanbook.me list so that we can get on a call together. Whatever I can do to help you, that's why I'm here. I want to share the wealth, share the knowledge, and occasionally hang out with our fish friends. Alright everybody, I'm going to set this back up and go shut down the stream for the day. Thanks again for watching.